Hello and welcome everybody to today's Zoom session, Spill the Beans, the GBC EMEA Volume Number 2. Spill the Beans, the GBC Cafe is a coffee table discussion series for the Democrats Abroad Global Black Caucus. Each month, we invite African Americans and our allies from all around the world and from all walks of life to grab a coffee or tea and connect with us via Zoom as we discuss hot topics and current issues. And believe me, it is so cold today in Zurich, Switzerland, that I need my tea. I really do. All of our chats are about an hour long, and we encourage you to share your thoughts on the topic of today as well. Before we kick off today's event, allow me to lay down some few and simple Zoom room etiquette rules. We are recording this session, so if you do not agree with being filmed, please turn your camera off. Please keep your microphones muted when you're not speaking, and please type * hands up into the chat box so we can cue people speaking. And please do not interrupt people mid-sentence while they are speaking. Democrats Abroad is a volunteer-driven organization, so please help us register Americans all over the world for the 2022 midterm elections. The easiest way to make a contribution is to visit www.democratsabroad.org/21_GVC_donations. And last but not least, I encourage you to share the knowledge of this session with your family, friends, co-workers, or even a stranger on the park bench. And believe me, this is something I regularly do, and the best conversations come out of that. So are you interested in providing a topic for the next coffee table discussion? Please contact us at blackcaucus@democratsabroad.org. My name is Leedonal, also known as Jasmine Dine Moore, your Democrats Abroad Global Black Caucus Chair and DPCA voting representative for Democrats Abroad Switzerland. And today's moderator, and joining us on today's call, is executive coach, mentor, Dr. Ramona Houston. Hello, Ramona, and it's good having you here with us today. Ramona Houston, hi.
Hi, nice to join you.
Thank you very much. It's really a great honor having you with us. Ramona Houston is on a mission to inspire social impact, a scholar, strategist, speaker, and host of the Empowerment Zone podcast. Ramona is passionate about solving social challenges, understanding the value of businesses, investing in and contributing in society. Ramona is founder and chief strategist of Kaliráh Strategies, a boutique consulting firm that helps corporations, businesses, and public figures to elevate their brands and grow their businesses through social impact. Through collaborating with Ramona, clients touch lives and transform communities, proving that businesses can make money and make an impact. With social impact as a focal point of her work, Ramona is a champion of social responsibility, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, and racial and social justice. Ramona is persistently working to fulfill her professional mission of inspiring minds, connecting communities, making social impact, and transforming the world. Ramona is native of Brownwood, Texas, and currently lives in Atlanta, Georgia. So let us know where everybody is from. Write it into the chat box. I would like to see who we got today. That would cheer us up. So if you want to contact or even learn more about all the great work Ramona is doing and find all the great resource that she provides, just visit her website, www.ramonahouston.com. I'm telling you, it was freezing today and my mindset is still frozen because I was outside with the dog. So excuse me for the little mishaps. So before we start off with today's topic, exploring Black-Brown empowerment and the importance of the midterm elections, I'd like to first dive into the great work which, Ramona, you really are doing. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about the Empowerment Zone podcast? What's it all about?
Well, thank you so much, Jazz, for inviting me to join the Democrats Abroad Global Black Caucus. It's such a pleasure to be here and participate in this event, Spill the Beans. The Empowerment Zone podcast really came out of my work in terms of being a scholar, an American historian, which focuses on African American and Mexican American history. And so in my research, I focus on our two communities' efforts to create social change. And one of the things that I find that scholars do is when we write our books, when we write our articles, we're really pretty much speaking to each other and not to a wider audience. You know, we don't write in the way that most people can actually digest the information. And I really wanted my scholarship to reach the masses. And so initially I started off doing a blog, right? And writing about different issues within the community. And as you know, blogs have gone on their way. And then podcasts came up and I said, wow, this is a great way to actually center and elevate African-American and Latino, Latina, Latinx voices. And so in that podcast, in the Empowerment Zone podcast, we feature African Americans and Latinos, Latinas who are doing great work all around the world. We celebrate African American and Latino, Latina institutions, organizations, our communities. We celebrate our events. So it's all about us. And one of the things that all of us, I don't want to say we challenge, let's say, instead of saying fight against, we challenge the perceptions that exist in media about who we are and our lives and what our communities represent. And here at the Empowerment Zone, you can see experts in all fields on the Empowerment Zone, because we believe at the Empowerment Zone that empowerment is about all things: political empowerment, educational empowerment, financial empowerment. And we also promote health and wellness, service, and philanthropy. So we have people in all fields that come to the Empowerment Zone to talk about their areas of expertise and really give advice and guidance on what we need to do in the community individually and collectively to be more empowered.
That is really a very, very broad field, but that is a field where a lot of empowerment really does need to happen. And just going back, looking at who your guests really are there any particular names you would like to drop out there? Because I listened to probably most of them until now, because a mutual Democrats Abroad friend from us who lives in Fiji, America, she introduced us initially, and then she told me about your podcast, and I started listening in because I do spend a lot of hours in the car. That's the best place to listen to podcasts. I don't know how everybody else feels about it. And it is really, and I mean this to the bottom of my heart, it is empowering, not just how you deliver your message, but also what each and every one of your guests has to say. Your microphone is muted?
Jazz, wow, I didn't know you were a listener like that. Yeah. And speaking of guests, Jazz is the guest for today's podcast, which is very ironic. We release our podcast on Mondays and Fridays, and it was just a pure coincidence that he was on today. But I'm glad to hear that you're a listener, and there are so many types of people that I have featured on the podcast. Like I stated, they're from all fields. They're from all over the United States and the world. And I've been very happy that people have accepted the invitation. And I've learned so much. I've learned so much about various fields, various topics. And like I stated before, empowerment, we like African Americans and the Latinx community always tries to state, oh, no, we really need political empowerment, or no, we need educational empowerment, or no, we need financial empowerment, when all of it is interrelated. And so that's what I like about the show and the guests. I've had people, many of my colleagues who are scholars who have recently published their books and have other books that they've talked about. I've had people in the nonprofit community who are really making a big impact. Lydia Camarillo, who is with the Southwest Voter Registration Education Project. She spoke, she was one of my first guests. Dr. Juan Andrade, who's one of the few people who has been honored by both the American and Mexican governments for his work in empowering the communities. I've had all types of people in the African-American community, from business owners to people who are in various professions, such as financial literacy. And so I've had quite a few guests. Mariela Romero, who is a anchor at Univision. It's a lot. So
absolutely, and it's really worth listening to all of them. I know this question might be a little mean, but do you have a favorite one, a favorite guest, or a favorite talk that you once had? Or something, maybe let's not be so mean. Maybe let's rephrase that and say, was there a talk you had that also empowered you with a certain topic?
Yes, I have two favorites, which I did mention, Dr. Juan Andrade and Lydia Camarillo. Those were two of my favorites because of their topic. They spoke about the life and legacy of Congressman John Lewis. And one of the things that people do not know about John Lewis is how influential he was in empowering the Latino, Latina, Latinx communities, in that he opened the door for the founding of the Southwest Voter Registration Education Project, as well as the United States Hispanic Leadership Institute, which are the two organizations that have registered the most Latinos in the country. The other one that I found empowering for me was Mariela Romero's interview. She's at Univision, as I stated, and she's a journalist. She's a superstar here in Atlanta, in the region, in the country. And I thought she was going to talk about her career and inspiring Latinas and Latinos, or whomever else who wanted to be in journalism, to give them advice. That's what I thought she was going to talk about. I allow my guests, just FYI, I allow my guests to determine their topic. So that was my assumption. And she ended up talking about embracing change. And what she stated is that, all of us go through change in life, right? And most of the time, we make that change more difficult by not embracing the change. And she really opened herself up and talked about her divorce, talked about career changes, all these things that happened in her life, which were really stressful for her. But in going through them, she realized that she was better after the event, but that it became easier for her to accept and go through it if she embraced the change. And that was very powerful for me, for not only embracing change, but also allowing yourself to be vulnerable, to allow other people to learn from you. So those are three of my favorite guests.
Oh, definitely. I mean, and also the one that you just now mentioned as well, it also reminds me very much of all the great work that Stacey Abrams is doing. I mean, she's also leading by example. She's crossing borders with different communities, with the Asian American community, and she's uniting them by leading by example as well. So I like people like that.
Yeah,
I don't-
Stacy's incredible. And she's as smart as a whip. Stacy and I actually went to school together. In Atlanta, there are 7. When I was in school, there were 7 historically Black colleges there. Clark Atlanta University, Morehouse College, Spelman College, Morris Brown College, Atlanta University, Morehouse School of Medicine, and the Theological Seminary. And so she was at Spelman and I was at Clark, and we actually were in an organization that group is, the group of colleges is called the Atlanta University Center. And so we were both in an organization that consisted of students of all of the campuses. And we also worked in the mayor's office together under the leadership of the Honorable Mayor Maynard Jackson, who really opened the door for a lot of mayors across the country, African-American mayors across the country. So she is wonderful. Like you stated, she is crossing borders and really reaching out to various communities and embracing the change, right? And making politics better, just because she has paved the way for more people to be involved in the democratic process.
So while we are looking at your bio, I pointed out the Kaliráh strategies. How does this help businesses grow through social impact? What's your secret behind it?
Yeah, so what we've found is that, and research shows that businesses who have a mission, a social mission, and who actually do good in the community actually end up growing more, because people want to spend money with companies that do well and do good in the community. Investors want to invest in companies who have high ESG ratings, and then employees want to work, particularly this new generation, want to work with companies who are doing good. I have a niece who stated, during the COVID and during the whole racial reckoning period of 2020, she told me, we're taking names of me. And when she said she meant her and her colleagues were taking names on who they were going to be shopping with from now on. And I, people always say that in research, but to actually hear my niece kind of say it in passing, like, we're taking names, we're not going to be shopping there anymore once this COVID is over. And so in terms of Kaliráh strategies, what our secret sauce is actually listening to our clients and seeing where they want to make an impact. I don't come in with my plan on what I think you should do, but really people have different passions, they have different interests, they have different ways that they want to impact the community. So we just help them by taking their ideas and actually developing and designing a strategy and then executing it for them. And so it makes it easier for them to actually do the work that they really enjoy doing and at the same time make an impact.
So, but when we also look at some of these corporates, or the corporate world itself, when it does come down to diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, it's not really always that equal for all of us. So what are the main struggles there if you are trying to really implement the Kaliráh strategies? How can you overcome those obstacles?
So one of the things about change is that people have to embrace change, right? People have to decide that they want to make a change. And change happens in all levels of any organization. It happens from the top all the way down to the management and the people. So and when I say people, excuse me, I mean the workers, the mainline workers. What ends up happening is that when we look at change, a lot of people in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion, they may say they're for it, right? But when it comes time to implementing it and executing, they have a challenge. And the reason is we really, really have to be real about and call it for what it is white supremacy, you know, and a lot of people don't want to have to deal with their own ideas and their own ways of perpetuating systems and structures that keep things unequal. And racism is not the only challenge in structure, in various structures. You have sexism, you have xenophobia, all these different isms within organizational structures that have to be addressed. And the reason they exist is people make organizations and institutions, right? And so therefore culture, they create the cultures within them. And so when we look at diversity, equity, and inclusion, it becomes challenging when people don't want to actually embrace the change and move the institution or organization forward.
Before I actually ask the next question, I do kindly remind everybody else on the call today, if you have questions as well for Ramona, or if you just want to chip in with your own idea, view, thoughts on what was just said, just raise your hand or star hands up, and you're very welcome to chip in. So how can we empower, how can we all empower social impact? How can we make that happen?
I think everyone has the role and the responsibility to actually be involved in social impact as individuals and collectively. And the way I always answer that question is that you have to determine what you're passionate about and exactly what change you want to make. As much as we see a lot of challenges in our communities and societies, and as much as we want to address all of them, and we just can't. So you have to decide as an individual, or your organization has to decide as an organization what issue it wants to address. And then once you determine that, then it's just about educating, and then not only education, but inspiration. What you do to inspire the people around you. For me, my area is American race relations and social impact. Everything that I do is within the area of social impact, but my area is American race relations. So that means that I have to educate myself on American race relations and what keeps people from working together and trying to address those issues, but just on an individual level. Hey, you can't come around me and say racial jokes, right? No matter what group you're talking about. I'm not just talking about African Americans, I'm talking about all people. And so once we begin to use our power within our own individual spheres of influence, because a lot of times we'll say something to people we don't know, but we won't say anything to our sister or our grandfather or our best friends when they crack jokes. So in answer to your question, in terms of making a change and being a social impact person who is really involved in social impact, you have to educate yourself and inspire the people around you to make change.
So I clearly can see that Beverly is taking a lot of notes. I think she's very inspired and empowered by what you're saying, Ramona. Beverly, is that true? I'm not trying to spotlight you right now, but I can see that you're really engaged in what she's saying, and I like that. I like what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I am, and I'm just sort of thinking about my own personal situation in Kenya, where people don't want to hear the truth. It's like, oh, no, we don't want, oh, let's be positive. Oh, let's move on. Oh, I mean, it's, I'm like, no, no, we have to address these issues. And well, my own particular issue in Kenya, outside of DA is I've been having issues with the courts of Kenya, the judiciary system, and protecting the man who is of political status and all of that. So all these sort of ridiculous things go on in the court that have nothing to do with critical thinking, which to me, that is what democracy is based on. And so, but to have these conversations, people, oh, that's a personal issue. I'm like, the courts of Kenya is not a personal issue. So it's no, and I'm just, yeah, because sorry, Ramona, yes, this thing about, yes, right, educating yourself and inspiring people. Yeah, how do you inspire people, especially when people don't want to hear? I mean, in Kenya, people just, they just don't want to talk about real issues a lot of times.
Beverly, if I may interrupt you shortly, do you think that's very much different than what the atmosphere is at the moment in the United States, where people do not want to hear each other out?
You have a good point. Now, really, to me, before Trump, I would have argued vehemently that it's very different in the US. But now, I mean, with seeing all these people come out who just have no basis for claims that they make, and it's like, where's your thinking? Where's your critical thinking? Let's put on our critical thinking hats. And it's like, it's just not there. And these are people who are in positions of leading in government, which is very scary. Well, and the same way that it is here. I mean, now I'm not saying everyone, but that has been my experience. And it's just like, what? That's not what. How do you run a democracy if you're not basing your claims and what you believe on some facts, some information, some credible information? I mean, so it's pretty bizarre. But yeah, right now, well, and as a matter of fact, I think someone had mentioned that Trump had meetings with like the head of state of Nigeria and Kenya, and I'm like, oh, that's where he got the ideas from. I mean, because elections are elections run, and somebody just says no. I don't accept the result, or rigging happens right before your eyes.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I mean, you're experiencing something that is really, really bad. And as I just pointed out, that also, that is an atmosphere that is very well known to us at the current state of the United States. Ramona, do you think that there is a way that we can inspire and empower a conversation that goes both ways again? Do you think that that's even possible?
It is possible, but in communication, you have to have a listener, okay? You have a person who speaks and a person who listens. And we all have to become conscious listeners, And I think right now we are in a situation in the United States where we're not listening to each other. And even I would even argue that those who say that they are listening are really not listening, because if you listen with empathy, right? You listen and you want to be able to relate to the other person and actually help in whatever way it is that you can help. And right now we are not in a society or in a culture that allows people or empowers people to listen, because like I said before, I think there is people consider what America is becoming a threat, right? And so in order to maintain power, people are doing whatever is necessary to maintain power.
So would you rephrase that last sentence to the United States is becoming a threat to itself?
Oh, definitely. I don't know who said it. I've heard this growing up for a long time, and I don't know who said it, so I can't refer it, but refer a book or anything. But there have been people who predicted that America could never be destroyed, that it would be destroyed within. And if that is indeed a truth, then we are beginning that truth now. There is no way that you can all live in the same boat and not be concerned about each other, okay? And thinking that because you're on the same boat, what happens to you doesn't apply to me. And so right now we are in a state that is really threatening to the viability of our country. And that is why the work that you do in social impact, which is getting people civically engaged, is so important, because we know what happens in the US impacts people all over the world. I am a firm believer, this is Ramona Houston's opinion, that if we had good leadership in the White House, we would not have had the COVID to happen in the way that it did, impacting the whole world, right? That is my opinion. And so going back to your work and getting people engaged all over the world, since we know what happens in America impacts the whole world, or when America's not involved, the whole world suffers, not just America, that people who vote abroad, it's important for you to vote, because you're actually determining the leadership, not only in the US, but in the world. So,
and you're pointing out something very true there, because we are doing the work on our side as well, but you're doing the work on your side too. So the most logical thing that there is actually that we do work together, because it is also very, very important for us to work together with grassroots organizations, so that we do not lose the connections, we do not lose the basis, the truth of it, what people experience in their everyday lives while they are on American soil and we're just abroad. We do have to point out that there are over 9 million Americans living abroad, of which about 6.5 are eligible to vote. But shockingly, during the last elections, there were only about 9% of those who actually did cast their vote. So that is quite a shockingly low number if you kind of do the maths around it. But it still was a victory of margin, especially in Georgia. A margin of victory. I always get those two words mixed up there. Georgia. So wouldn't it be great if we could empower even more people to not be afraid to cast their vote and to execute their fundamental human right? And that goes side by side also with education that we do offer with our Democrats Abroad organization. So looking at education and empowerment, what do you personally think? Are they equal? Is one stronger than the other? Do they go hand in hand? How would you look at that?
Well, before I answer that question, I want to go back to something you stated. You stated that only 9% of people abroad voted in the 2020 election. So I would say I would agree with you that that is somewhat disheartening, but I bet you that is also encouraging as well, because I'm sure that number went up from the previous election, did it not? Or that percentage?
I have to be honest, I do not know the statistics of the previous election then, but I think it did went up. Yes, it went up tremendously actually, but I don't have the exact number.
Well, I would, if I were in your leadership shoes, I would use that story, you know, because that's empowering, right? To say, hey, we moved from here, this many people engaged civically and voting, to this percentage. So yes, 9% may appear to be minute, but it's big when you look at how many more people that you had to vote. And the reason I would argue that you had more people to vote is because of your education and outreach efforts. Democrats abroad was engaged, you know, in that whole election cycle. And the more we get engaged, the more we educate people and the more we empower people. So I would tweak your story a bit from saying it was only 9%. Say, yes, it was 9%, but that's bigger than the percentage before, and we still have a long ways to go. I was at a conference called, just a minute, I'll think of, I don't know why my name, but I do want to acknowledge them. But one of there were two speakers who were well-known educators. And of course, I'm forgetting their names too. One was an African-American man and the other Latino. And they were talking about educating people of color in higher education. And one of the arguments that they made was that a lot of times when people of color sit in the classroom, they're thinking, oh, I can't make an A in this class, and they're already discouraging themselves. They stated from an educator's point of view, if they weren't doing well, don't tell them, hey, you can go from failing to an A. Tell them, no, we're going to go from, you made a 60 on this last test, let's make a 70 on this next test. And then on the next test, let's make an 80. And they said that's more empowering and encouraging, because you're not looking at what people may appear, they may think it is impossible. You're making them see that the small steps do make a difference. And when we look at change, no matter what kind of change we're implementing, whether it's personal change or whether it's change within our communities, it's always those incremental steps. There were a lot of steps that had to be taken before African Americans even earned the right to vote, right? But each one of those steps made a difference and made an impact. So now, okay, go ahead. Excuse me, Jess. So going to your question about education versus empowerment, I think the two go hand in hand, that you must educate yourselves, you must educate each other, must educate in your own process of making change. But at the same time that you're educating yourself and others, you're also empowering yourself and others, right? When you know more and you do better, right? And so it's both, they go hand in hand. It's not either or.
Absolutely. I have to tell you something. I feel empowered at the moment. I feel like, because I was a bit tired, chilly, freezy today, because it's really a cold winter day here, almost winter. And I was like, yeah, I'm quite chill today. And so I was like, okay, I still got plenty of work ahead of me today, but I want to do this. I want to do this. So thank you for that. And again, everybody who's on the call, if you want to chip in with any questions or your personal thoughts, just hand up or star hand up into the chat box, and we will cue you. So going back to our initial kind of topic of today, exploring Black, Brown empowerment and the importance of the midterm elections. Let's look at the word empowerment a little bit, because I think, or do you think that everybody knows the difference between Black power and Black empowerment? Is there a difference? Should there be a difference?
Well, there is there are all these connotations of what Black power represents, and many times people look at Black power as negative, and we can use Congressman John Lewis, for example. If you look at the documentary and do some readings, you will find that when Kwame Ture, his former name was Stokely Carmichael, when he started talking about Black power at one of the marches, Congressman Lewis stated that was his exit. That was when he left, because he didn't like the way Black power felt to him, so it means different things to different people. And so for some who embrace the ideology of Black power, what they're saying is, I am Black, I am proud to be Black, I am proud to support Black institutions and Black organizations. I believe that Black people should have access to all opportunities. I believe that Black people can be independent and work for ourselves and be empowered by that. That's what some people believe who embrace Black power. It's not about anti-whiteness or anti-anybody else, even though some people embrace that connotation that that's what they're saying, but that's not what they're saying if you read on Black power. So when we look at Black power in a negative connotation, some people believe, hey, it's anti-everybody and only Black is right. And that's not, I don't think that is the right perception. But going back to your original question, you were asking about Black power versus what? You're muted. You're muted.
Sorry, sorry. Black power versus Black empowerment.
Mm-hmm.
But you actually summed it up pretty well in there. So
I think they're synonymous, but people who don't embrace the term Black power and think of it negatively, or that it's a threat to everything else, is totally, I can totally see how they would separate the two.
Yeah. So do you think that Black or Brown empowerment should go hand in hand with any kind of elections that are now on the horizon, especially now with the midterm elections on the horizon? This might be a no-brainer question.
Yeah, I'm like, that's what I was thinking. I was trying. There's no way. I mean, you can't, if you're going to talk about political empowerment and talking about making a change within how the government relates to you and your community, that's Black power. That's empowerment. I mean, I don't understand. If you didn't believe in Black power, you wouldn't go vote. You know what I mean? There's no way you can separate it.
Absolutely. But there are people that think different about that.
Yes, there are people that state that what's the use in participating? We need to create our own blah, 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 blah. And I understand that argument, but I don't care where you live in the United States. Okay. I don't care where you live in the world. You're going to be impacted by the US government, period. And so if you talk about hey, I'm laying out, I don't want to vote, I'm doing a protest vote or whatever, you're hurting yourself and your community, because the government, no matter where you live, determines every single aspect of your life, from where you work to who you love to what kind of toilet tissue you use. It's all determined by our governments. And that's why it's so important for people to be engaged in the civic process, so that you can have a voice and you can have some type of influence on what goes on. Then, and as bad as things are perceived to be, okay, they are much better with all of us voting than what it was when people did not have their opportunity to vote. And I would love to hear if anybody disagrees with that and what their argument would be.
Absolutely. So again, you're very welcome to chip all in. And speaking about voting, I mean, how do you personally think, how can we get more African-American, Latinx people that are out there, not just on American soil, but also living abroad, to be motivated and empowered to go out and cast their vote when their fundamental voting right is being targeted left, right, and center? I mean, that itself is very disheartening for a lot of people out there. They're like, either they're afraid or they are disillusioned in the whole process of democracy. So how do you think we can empower them and motivate them to stand up against this hatred and disenfranchisement as well?
I'm going to reach for the ancestors. Okay. So, as bad as it appeared, you know, during slavery, United States slavery, during the Reconstruction period, during the Nadir period, during the Civil Rights Movement, up until now, despite how bad it looked and how bad it was, people still said it can be better. And a lot of times it's not just about you. I can say, I'm sure that the people who fought in the various movements that have existed in the United States kind of knew that they might not be able to enjoy the fruits of their labor, right? That they were doing it for the next generation, right? They were doing it for their children. They were doing it for their grandchildren. And so if you're not motivated, or you find people in your spheres of influence, in your network, that are not motivated to be engaged civically in their communities, then it's up to you to help inspire them and help engage and to engage them. You know, does that mean you might have to be inconvenienced and take somebody to the polls? That might be it, you know, but you have to do what you can within your sphere of influence to say, hey, I need you and we need you in order to make a difference and make this world what it ought to be and what it could and should be.
And especially, if I may add, future generations need you, because we've come a long way, but the journey is not over yet. Not over yet.
And I do, going back to the previous discussion, I do want to acknowledge that organization,
Sure.
which I couldn't remember. It's the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities. I just went blank, but they are one of the premier organizations that advance Latinx education in the United States, not only higher education, but also helping people and Latinos who want to work in higher education.
Nice. So speaking about those resources, is there any other resource page or collection that you would recommend?
Well, I always tell people, and no matter what field that they are in, or what their interest may be, that they have to first determine what their interest is and then find those organizations that speak to it, you know. So for me, I am involved in history organizations, right? Because I'm a historian. But within history, there are the wider historical organizations as well as the specific, like the Association for the Study of Afro-American Life and History, the Black Women's Historical Association. There's all these, the Association of Black Women Historians, excuse me. So within that, but then of course there is the civil rights component. So at one point in time, I was really involved in Rainbow Push. You know, you have the NAACP, you have the Urban League, and then within the Latino community, there are all these organizations, which I've mentioned some. But if you look at it, you have to decide which ones you want to be in. For politics, I love the Congressional Black Caucus, and I'm involved in their work, you know. And so I would recommend for your audience to determine what is their passion, what is their interest personally and professionally, and they can get involved in those organizations that speak to that and that move the issues forward that you're passionate about.
Absolutely. Thank you very, very much for that. There's one last question, and I know our time is actually almost running out here. And I'm going to ask this question to everybody on today's call and also to you, Ramona. What are y'all personal predictions for the outcome of the midterms?
Okay. Well,
so you can start, Ramona?
Yeah. I'm going to tell you what my prediction. I'm going to tell you my prediction, my frustration, and then my prediction. My frustration, now I'm one of those people, you know how they talk about America being polarized and only in their world in terms of the news they listen to, the people they're with. I am one of those people to an extent about my news. And I watch a particular station, and it's one of the liberal stations. And so, or considered liberal, okay, but just if you're a journalist, you know, we would just say one of those stations that is not tilted. But anyway, my frustration in listening to the commentary is everybody is predicting that there will be a turnover of the House and potentially the Senate with the upcoming elections. My frustration is like you keep speaking it, and you're going to make it happen. That is my frustration. Yeah. And I think it's almost a way to, in my opinion, they do it to keep the news up, you know, and to keep conflict in the air. And I think that, and they're saying that we may stay home and this and that. They're never saying, hey, we wonder what will happen. It's like they're predicting it. They're saying it over and over again. Now, as a historian, I understand they're saying that is the way things
most
have
probable
gone.
Outcome,
Yeah. But that doesn't mean it has to be like that. And they continue to talk about negative things in the media about the Democrats or what have you. The Democrats do it to ourselves as well, instead of giving a message, hey, these are the changes we've made and this is where we're going, stay with us. And so I think that my prediction is that if the Democrats buy into this false narrative, that is exactly what's going to happen, is that you will see a change in government. But I don't believe it could and should happen because our coalition is broad, and our coalition can be effective if it stays together.
Mhm. Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I have the exact same thoughts as you do, and it's crazy. Do we have anybody else who has a different opinion about it or wants to talk on that last question? Beverly, sure.
Well, I have no idea how it's going to turn out. I just know that it's just important to do all that one can, no matter what. Yeah, of course, I'm hopeful, but even, it's just to do, make sure you vote, make sure you encourage other people to vote, lead them by the hand, and get them that information, bring up some topics to, that sort of motivate them. And that's, I mean, blue or red, I mean, that's really all that you can really do. Just do what you can.
And there's something that I learned on today's call. Change the narrative so that people stay inspired and are not, do not just see the failing, but see the small little steps that need to be made and have small little wins along the way. That is my biggest takeout from today, Ramona.
That's great, because you have to, I mean, let's look at health, for example, right? Everybody's trying to lose weight. Most people, right? For whatever reason. You don't lose 20 pounds in a day. You celebrate that 1 pound here. You celebrate that you passed up that chocolate cake that you knew you wanted. You celebrate that you ate that salad instead of the hamburger. You celebrate each step you take, each day you take. You can't, and as you celebrate each moment, before you look up, you're at that 20 pounds, right? And that's what we've got to do. Hey, let's celebrate what we've accomplished. Let's celebrate what we've accomplished today, okay? And then let's keep pushing. Let's keep pushing, keep pressing toward the mark, if you will, so that we can indeed create the communities, the society, the nation, the world that we want to create.
So let's all celebrate small victories for the big win.
I love that. That's okay. Repeat that, because that's going to be my Monday motivation on my social media. Okay.
Celebrate small victories for the big win. That's really a good catchphrase, huh? Like it. Created
let that
out
be.
of teamwork.
Let that be the motto for the coming year up into the
Absolutely.
election. I love that. Let's celebrate the small victories for the big win. Monday motivation. Y'all can find it.
Ramona, thank you very, very much. Our 60 minutes are actually almost over. It was a real great pleasure having you here today. If anybody else wants to reach out to Ramona, you could easily find her website under www.ramonahouston.com, or check out the Empowerment Zone podcast on Spotify and on
it's on the podcast platform.
Yeah. There you go. So that is really absolutely worth listening to all of that.
I said podcast platform, but it's Lord have mercy. Why can't I remember? Apple Podcast. Excuse me.
There we go.
Apple Podcast. Sorry.
There we go. The next Spill the Beans, the GBC Cafe AP version, volume 1 is tomorrow, Saturday, November 20th, 12 p.m. Hong Kong time. So that means 5 a.m. for us here in Central Europe. And that's going to be really early because I do have to get up for that one too. But the next one with the EMEA version will be on December 16th at 6 p.m. Central again. Thank you all so much for joining in today. Thank you, Ramona, for your great insight, your great inspiration, your great empowerment. And it's been a real treat. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jazz, so much. Thank you to the Democrats Abroad Global Black Caucus for having me. And thank you for all the great work y'all are doing all over the world.
Thank you very, very much. Have a lovely weekend. And if you want to watch this recording, it will be presented on YouTube as well. And looking forward to meeting y'all the next time again.
Everybody have a wonderful holiday as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. You too.